In our last video, we looked at Latina women in Hollywood, and we kind of looked at my story a little bit. We also discussed different Latina women. And in this video, we'll pretty much just focus on real life women that I know in my school, and we'll just take a look at what they have to say about who they are and how it affects them in the United States.
And I am Mexican and Puerto Rican.
My name is Ruby Tabar, and I'm from the Dominican Republic, and I identify as an Afro-Latina, so I identify with both my African roots and my Latina roots, which are really important to me.
My name's Natalie. I'm half Mexican and half Guatemalan.
So my name is Maria Guadalupe Tiscareño, and I am Mexican.
My name is Viviana Moreno. I am from Venezuela, so I am ethnically South American and Latina. And I consider my race to be mixed with indigenous white and black roots.
Being a woman in my family in these Latino-based communities, and I have to clean, cook, take care of the family, which, I mean, my brother doesn't take care of my grandmother, I do. I cook for her, I clean for her and her boyfriend. And so I believe being a woman in this community can sometimes be, like, as many people say it, a double job. I go to work, I still clean and cook, and I'm a full-time student. So a lot of the times we are supposed to be catering to the men in our family, and being a woman in this generation, that's not something I believe in. But I believe that we should treat each other respectfully, but not as like slaves.
I think one of the major issues that come with being both of those categories is the fact that we're kind of already marginalized, like already being of dark skin and already being a Latina is already like an issue, just being Hispanic in general. So on top of it being female, it adds to it as well. I have to fight harder to do everything, and I just have to work harder for everything. So yeah, you just gotta work 10 times harder and like just give it 110% the entire time.
Well, I'm really light-skinned, so no one's ever believed that I was Hispanic. Every time that I speak Spanish, everyone's kind of just stares at me and they're like surprised. So personally, I've never experienced anything just because I've never actually believed to be Hispanic. But I always see it with everyone else that it's the fact that you're a girl, the fact that you're a minority, and then the fact that you're trying to do all of these things here. It's like you feel a little more downgraded than everyone else.
I've grown up in different places in the United States since I've been here. I think one of the biggest struggles that I face, and I continue to face, being a woman and being Latina, and the one that kind of like tops that a little bit, it's being undocumented, just because it provides a lot of barriers, right? So now I have to embody this identity of being a woman. I'm embodying my identity very proudly of being a brown Latina woman, but on top of that, there's like this very constant barriers, right? So I've chosen to actually embrace my identity as undocumented, as opposed to just kind of like hide it in the background and treat it as only as a legality thing, or as only the fact that I'm lacking, that 9-digit number. The whole point is that I've actually embraced it as a identity as well. Like being undocumented in this country means a lot of things. The way that, definitely not having access to a lot of things that most people that are born here or that have Social Security number have access to, like applying for schools, applying for jobs, applying for scholarships, applying for internships, and anything that are kind of like in my journey of me trying to achieve what I want to do in my career, what I want to do professionally and personally as well. So those things tend to overlap as well. That is the one thing that I actually see kind of like coming out the most, and the one thing that I see that is more like palpable to me. I've always been proud of being a woman. I've been really very, very proud of being a brown, outspoken woman as well. And I feel like in the spaces that I choose to be in, they kind of affirm that. But when it comes to the undocumented status, that kind of comes up all the time. And no matter what space I'm in, like it is very, like, it's still there. So growing up in Florida, I grew up with a lot of Latinos, but then being undocumented was still very different. So even though I was surrounded by a lot of South Americans, I was still undocumented, so I still didn't have as much access to things. Then when I lived in North Carolina, I think that's when my race actually became a little bit more visible, when I was like the only person of color working in a restaurant of like 100 people, and people would all the time ask me if I was from India. I would have customers ask me if they could be served by someone else. I would be exoticized in a way. They would be like, "Oh my God, you're South American. That's so hot," as if I was like a show animal at a zoo. You know what I mean? As opposed to like a person. So I think that's when I really felt my race in the United States, and I had to get out because there weren't that many people of color. And then I moved to Chicago, and here I feel like it's a very difficult city to live in, but it's very affirming as when it comes to like my identity as a brown woman. But I still, being undocumented is still an obstacle, and it's still definitely like puts a lot of kind of like stones in my road, but it's also an identity, kind of helps you how to like struggle even more, you know?
For my Mexican stereotypes, I would say that we're all legal, but I'm legal. I'm like the 4th generation here. And for my Puerto Rican side, well, we have the switch. We get mad easily, which I believe is not true all the time. A lot of people come up to me and they'll be like, "Hola, ¿cómo estás? Hablas inglés? Hablo inglés." Okay, I understand. Yo comprendo every word. One time I went to Tennessee where this man came up to me. He was like, "Comprendo? Comprendo." That is so insulting. At work, since we are minorities at work, we work with a lot of African Americans, and so they come up to us and I think they believe that this is the only chance that they can practice their Spanish. So they come up to me and my friend, who is also Mexican, and they'll say, "Hola, ¿cómo estás?" And I'll be like, "Good, how are you?" Because I feel that's so disrespectful.
With being from the Republic, there's always a stereotype within its own culture that women are meant to only do like womenly things. So like you're meant to be in the kitchen, you're meant to raise kids, you're meant to like go to college, but then do something like nursing or something of that nature. So that's like one of the major like stereotypes and stuff like that. But it's also the kind of thing that just being an Afro-Latina woman, people expect me to be like exotic, to be like to just listen and understand and not talk back and stuff like that, which I think just goes along with being a woman in general. So I just think that just being Hispanic on top of it, they're just like, "Oh, she's obedient," or like she's very mad, like she's aggressive all the time, like that kind of thing, which isn't always true. Like I'm aggressive by nature, but it's just because I get mad at things very easily. But
Guatemalans, we kind of have the reputation of being really como mal hablados, so like we kind of curse a lot. And then Mexicans, at least with guys, we tend to say that they're really machistas. But stereotypes, as for women, it's usually the same thing with every culture, where you just believe that a woman is not worth as much as a man just because the men are the ones who supposedly have to run everything.
Some of the stereotypes are that we are uneducated, undocumented, and that we take advantage of the aid that we're offered by the government.
Some stereotypes that I have heard before have been, I think because I am righteously and rightfully and genetically loud, that I am like a loud Latina, a spicy Latina, picante and all these things. I'm not a spice, you know what I mean? So basically kind of like that, reducing people of that. I've been called exotic. I just really highlighting the foreignness, and I think that was more when I had like a thicker accent and it was more visible to people. I think that it's interesting now that I identify myself as a feminist, then people kind of like clump all of those together and use that as to invalidate what I have to say. So because I am a feminist now, they're like, "Oh, you're just an angry Latina. You're just like too angry about everything, and you just like to yell at people and have it your way." As opposed to actually listening to the content of the things that I'm saying. So they're using my feminism and my race and my ethnicity as kind of like an insult, like, you know, towards me. Reducing us to this just like volatile people that are not capable of being passionate, that are not capable of being reasonable, that are not capable of actually having wisdom. Do you know what I mean? So everything is reduced to you're just angry, you're just fiery, and you just want to like start some trouble.
I think one thing that I would say to challenge the stereotypes that have already been given to us is that kind of look past it, like past the anatomy of it and past like the stereotype of it already, and just go from there. Because it's like, just because I'm a woman doesn't mean that I can't work just as hard as a man, doesn't mean that I can't fight as hard as a man, like all these things. And just because I'm Hispanic doesn't mean that I can't fight as hard as anyone else. So that kind of thing, I just say challenge those things and question it and just go from there. Because it's like, if you just sit there and say it and stand by, it's not fair to anyone, not even yourself. So
What I have to say about those stereotypes is that we thrive in education and that we work very hard for what we have.
I think it's just a matter of changing people's beliefs in what Hispanic culture is in general, not just like Guatemalan or Mexican. It's kind of more like establishing people as being like everyone else. Like, just because you're Hispanic doesn't mean you're any different than a white person, a black person, an Asian person. It doesn't matter. It's like everyone has their own feelings, everyone has their strengths, their weaknesses, and just because you come from one particular culture doesn't mean anything. I mean, your culture just embraces a little bit more of who you are, but it should never hinder you in any way. I think this is really important just because I'm a business major, just because I'm a girl, and because I'm actually a minority, even though I might never look like one, and no one will ever use that against me either. I think it's just important to recognize your own strengths and realize that you're above all these stereotypes and that no one can actually tell you you can't do this, because that's one of my biggest fears and like biggest problems, is that someone's going to tell me you can't do something, because it's like I'm going to do it just to prove you wrong, and that's one of my biggest philosophies.
I love everything about my culture. I love the language, even though I can't speak it properly, I love it. I believe there's something beautiful in the place, in a way that you could trace back your heritage, your traditions, and you realize how far they've come. For a lot of my families, for my Puerto Rican side, we use adobo, and I never realized that that was just a Puerto Rican thing, since I am Mexican and Puerto Rican. And it's funny because I feel like these traditions make me stronger. It's just not one that makes me stronger, it's both of them. And so I use a lot of traditions like folklore. I used to dance folklore, and I love the way the skirts flow, and even though it's tiring, I love it. I listen to Jibarito in my car, even though that's Puerto Rican. I think they just make who I am, and that's something I love.
one thing that I can say that I love about my culture is a sense of kind of acceptance, and to an extent it's kind of the type of thing that within my family, my mom's very like traditional, and culturally she's very much like just like her mother and her mother's mother, and in that sense, but she's also become kind of Americanized, and she's kind of learning that I didn't grow up in that same kind of thing. So it took her a while, but now she's accepting it, and I feel like a lot of my family has also worked like that. So I think the level of acceptance and understanding that slowly has become of this culture, and it's not just a place where, oh, one thing changes, we're not going to do anything about it. It's becoming a space where slowly we're growing and slowly we're learning and accepting that things are changing, and that if we don't change with it, we're going to be stuck in the past, and no one wants that.
Mexican culture is a very rich and lively culture. We're very unified and passionate about who we are.
I always consider myself a little more Guatemalan than I do Mexican, just because no one ever believes me when I say that I'm Mexican, because I don't like any of the same things, and I've always connected more with the Guatemalan side of my family. Guatemalan culture, the food, I can't even explain what it was, because no one would understand what the food is, but to me it's just amazing. I mean, I go every year. I'm going this year again. I went for 3 months in the summer, and it was the best time. It's just learning more about who you are, where you come from, kind of, and realizing that there's more than what you just see. Like, there's a whole different part of a country and a part of a culture that you never actually get to experience just because you're so involved with yourself and those around you, not every single person around you.
I think what I love about my culture, specifically as a Venezolana, I've been identifying more as a sudaca, which is a term used by South Americans that are like really, really proud. I think there's a really beautiful identity that embodies South America as a whole. Of course, there's like different countries, and we have different cultures, different languages, and stuff like that. But I think there is this sense of unity that exists within South America that is very beautiful. That is not seen. I don't think it's seen too much in the rest of the Americas. And I'm really, really into that, just because I think it just fosters a sense of belonging, you know, and kind of like of belonging to a land, as opposed to just to one specific country. So I love that about being South American. I love being a brown woman. I love my skin color. I absolutely love the melanin. That's something like my mom and my family have always kind of like uplifted since I was little too. So I've always kind of like grown up loving who I am and not necessarily trying to compare myself in terms of like lighter skin or anything like that. Everything Venezuelan culture is very, very similar to Caribbean culture actually, as opposed to Andean culture. So a lot of what we do and a lot of what we are is very tied to the Caribbean. So our food is very Caribbean style. Our music is like salsa, merengue. And I love the fact that specifically the country that I'm from, we literally have like all of the ethnicities. Like we have a very rich Black Venezuelan culture. We have numerous amounts of indigenous cultures that are still keeping their languages and their cultures alive. We have European folks here and there, and then we have a whole lot of mix, right? So like, and I love that. That we're very much mixed. What I don't like is sometimes we tend to erase the fact that we do have differences among us, because racism is still alive and well in Venezuela. But I do love that people, at least I think that for the most part, they try to make sure to understand one another, even though we're so mixed. I think that it's really important to pay attention, validate, listen to, and research the differences that are among us. That doesn't mean that we can't get to an understanding. I am not a believer that we're all the human race and I don't see color. I think that's really offensive, because it erases the fact that we all have really rich, different ways of being, and that's just not fair. You know, just because we all live different realities and we all embody different identities, and I think those should be celebrated and those should be acknowledged. And if anything, those should be points of solidarity. You know, I think the one points like that we intersect as women, intersect as women of color, Latina women, immigrant women, whatever you name it. I think that we can find those points of solidarity where we actually do have things that in common to try to like help each other out in our struggle for liberation, as opposed to just erase it all.